If you have certain collections in your bullet journal that you're just kind of sick of setting up time and time again with each new bullet journal you make, things like your swatch pages and reference pages, then a long-term collections journal might be what you need. This is my long-term collections journal in an A5 Archer and Olive. I set this one up a couple of years ago and I've just been gradually adding to it as I find those collections that I don't want to set up time and time again. You can effectively think of this like a reference book. So the collections that go in this journal are the ones that I'm going to want to keep longer than the life of just one of my journals. Today we're going to be flipping through this one though, so you can see the kind of stuff that I actually put in here. And as you can see, the first page is the nameplate. One of the things that I wanted to do in setting up this journal was keep it super simple. So all of the pages are just done in the style of having this style of lettering for the headers. They've got a simple border, but there's not a lot of decoration, not a lot of like doodles, stickers, that kind of stuff, just to make it really super manageable. Also, by keeping all of those kind of elements the same, it helps tie all the pages together so they all look cohesive. On this first page though, I just wrote myself some notes about what actually belongs in this journal. So, some questions to ask myself regarding whether something should go in here versus going in my everyday bullet journal. Things like, am I going to need this or use this collection in 6 months' time or longer? Is this reference material that I want to keep long term? Is this a tracker that will be used for over a year? Because if I'm only using it for a year, it should go in my yearly collections journal, which we already have a flip through of. Is this a swatch page for pens or materials that I use often? Will I actually keep up with this spread in terms of keeping it up to date and filled in? So if the answer is yes, then I can put it into this notebook. As you can see, I started this one on the 11th of March 2021, and because it's a long-term journal and only the collections that are long-term things go in here, I still have plenty of pages to use. But we're going to have a look at the stuff that I have set up. So typically in my journal, I don't actually use an index, mainly because things are in chronological order. So January, then February, then March. But this journal isn't like that. This journal doesn't have that daily planning stuff in it. So I did decide to use an index in here, and because there are no page numbers in the Archer and Olive, I did have to put them in myself. So you can see we have the index, simple header, simple border, that kind of stuff, blue. Then we're on to green for the collection ideas. So this page is a place for me to put collection ideas for this journal in particular. So not collections just in general, but specifically long-term collections. As I make those collections though, I can just tick them off. So you can see some of the ones I have on here have been ticked off, and some of them I still have to make, or maybe want to make. Admittedly, some of them I don't really want to make anymore, but I'm not going to cross them off, I'll just leave them there. It's all good. Because there might be a point in life that I do want to make them. For instance, one of the ones that I know I want to make is a master groceries list and a master meals list. Having those in here would be really helpful, so something to work on. The next page here is that of bullet journal themes. So these are theme ideas that I would like to do at some point. Things like a galaxies theme, or forests, or cross stitch. Again, as I actually do those in my journal, I can just tick them off, and you can see this page is themed in yellow. You might be able to see the kind of trend we're going with here in terms of the color selections. So green to yellow to orange to red. It's effectively just reverse rainbow done over and over again. On this one though, we have my master birthdays list and holidays, just because I can add these things to my future log, that's totally fine, but having a reference to go to find all of those birthdays and those holidays that I celebrate, very helpful. The idea was for the space up the top here, on the holidays page in particular, to write down holidays that I celebrate that don't have fixed dates each year. So ones that the date changes depending on the year. Haven't got around to adding that yet, but it's something to do at some point. So birthdays and holidays, and then flipping over we have my apocalypse. So going back to the end of the rainbow, so we had red, now it's back to purple. The apocalypse is just a fancy way of saying a bucket list, but they're effectively things that I wanted to do before the apocalypse. I do need to add some more things to this list, but see I have plenty of space for adding more items. After this one, we have some reference pages. So things to include on a monthly setup, like what kind of monthly layouts might I want to include. I don't include all of these every month, obviously. If you've been here a while, you very much know that. but it's more so just if I want to incorporate something new into my monthly setup, I can come to this reference to see the types of things that I could include. So maybe for a just for fun page, I might want a memories page or a playlist for the month. If I want some kind of a tracker, maybe I want to put a tiny wins log or a self-love log or a self-care bingo. Just ideas. I don't use them all the time, but having the reference I do find helpful. Another reference is that of the weekly layout ideas or things that I can include on a weekly layout. So if I have a little bit of extra space and I'm not too sure how to use it, I can come to this list and pick something out that's going to fit for that time of my life. Flipping over, the next series of pages, well, in part, they kind of bother me because they don't quite match the aesthetic that I have in the rest of the notebook, but I still like having them in here. But this is effectively kind of like media to consume mostly. So TV shows and like tracking how much I've watched. So for instance, if we think about like Suits, I've got a half filled in box because I've started but not finished it. I've watched 5 seasons, I have 4 to go. So I just black out any of the boxes that are for seasons that don't actually exist. As I complete the show, fully finish watching it, then I can just color that box in full. So like Avatar Legend of Korra, it had 4 seasons, I watched all 4 of them. These ones are kind of in weird places because I know RuPaul's Drag Race has like quite a few seasons. I only actually have enough space across for I think 12 seasons, but I've watched up to season 13, so that's why it goes across 2 rows here. And I feel like Drag Race All-Star might eventually end up being a similar thing. I won't necessarily watch all of it, but you know, just giving myself some room to grow for those shows that run for quite a long time. After this, we have the movies list. Similar idea again, but you can see I have 2 columns per page on this one. And we've just got like the name of the movie, and I can color it in once I've watched it. Some of these go across 2 lines because the title of the movie was quite long, so that box is just a bit bigger. And then as I watch them, color it in, all good. After movies, we have books. So these pages effectively act as not only a long-term media consumed kind of style page, but also like my TBR, or my to be watched, or my to be listened to, or whatever else. So books, and I do know I have some other books to add onto this list. Got games, which I also have some things to add to. And then on the back here, I have skills. And this is the idea of like skills that I want to build, and then as I actually kind of practice and not necessarily master that skill, but at least get the basis down, I can color it in here. I haven't added any to the list just yet, need some brainstorming. On to the next page. Here we have my wish list and my things I want to adultify list. So the idea that I have for these two, they are kind of semi-related, I suppose you could say. But this is kind of like new stuff that I want, and this is more stuff that I already have, but I'd like to get a kind of higher quality or like better version of that. So one that I can certainly check off is that we did get a new bed. So we have upgraded our bed. I have adultified my bed. Flipping on over, after this one we have my things to do in certain amounts of time. So this is kind of like a reference for when I have a little bit of free time and I don't really know what to fill it with, but I want to do something productive, then I can come to this page. So some of the productive things are like productive in terms of like self-care productive, so like a face mask or a hair mask kind of thing, and other ones are things like little chores or other bits and pieces that I could do, like, you know, a 30-minute Skillshare class or something like that. I could set up a weekly log or whatever else. Lots of room to grow here though, got plenty of space to add in additional tasks. On to page 23 and 24, we have some more reference materials. So things to include when setting up a new bullet journal. Again, I wouldn't set up all of them, but it just gives me some ideas if I want to set something up or I've got a spare page and want to put something on it. We then have the how often should I list. This one is in part like my own personal preferences regarding how often I want to do things, and in part a reference that I found online for how often I should be doing these things. Another reference for my long-term collections journal. This one is a what's wrong page. And the idea here is that it's a reference that you can refer to anytime that you're feeling some kind of discontentment. So the first thing is to identify what's wrong, like how are you feeling that is got you in a state that isn't optimum. So for instance, I'm feeling unaccomplished. What kind of things could I do to make myself feel more accomplished in that moment? if I'm feeling emotionally overwhelmed, what kind of things could I do to mitigate the distress or stress that I feel with regards to that? I feel like this one is a very valuable page to have. Flipping over though, and this one is a what to do with a blank notebook reference. So again, just a reference list of, if I wanted to set up a new journal for something in particular, but I wasn't too sure what I wanted to use it for, then I have some ideas that I can, come and have a look at for that. For instance, a 5-year journal, which I have now set up. A mental health journal, which I also have now too. So a bunch of ideas on that one, but still some room to grow. Long-term tracking. Or maybe a long-term collections journal. We also have another reference for gaming-related bullet journal layout ideas. So effectively a similar type of list to some of the previous references we've had, just with gaming focus. This one has its own video along with a couple of the other layouts that we've got in here. All of those are linked in the description box below though. We then also have my habits master list. So sometimes when I go to set up my habit tracker, I don't necessarily remember which habits I want to track. So the idea behind this list is that all of the ones that I commonly want to track will go on here. The ones that are kind of like repeatedly on my habit trackers. So a little bit of room to grow there, but just a little list for that one. And technically speaking, if I need more space, I could section this in half and then continue the list on the other side as well. So for this one, we have countries I want to visit and eateries I want to try. These ones I consider to be long-term lists because in the life of one journal, which is like, 6 months to 3 months depending, I'm not going to travel to all of these places. So if I have it in those journals, I just end up having to transfer it to the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. Having them in here though, much more easy. Don't have to reset them up every single time. I really love this lettering style. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it's still a lot of fun. I have plenty of room in this journal. I have a list of pages to make in my bullet journal, ones that are not long-term collections, but would go in my everyday journal. It's kind of like a snapshot of me type thing, stuff like that. So we have the A to Z of me, so writing out a kind of descriptor or an adjective for each of the letters of the alphabet, things I like, Ravenclaw related stuff, because I'm a Ravenclaw, things I like about me in general. You could do things like your Enneagram, your Myers-Briggs, all of that kind of thing. The reference we have over here is my KonMari checklist. I mean, you could say it's technically anybody's KonMari checklist because this is the KonMari structure. It's just a reference for any time I want to do or like re-KonMari of my space, then I can look through this list so I know what order to do things in. We have a drinks that I want to try or make, and then a foods that I want to try or make. And for this one, I've split it into alcoholic versus non-alcoholic. And for foods, I've split it into sweet versus savory. I do have more foods that I want to try. I am very aware that I don't just have 2 things. But when I set this one up, I was in a bit of a hurry, so I didn't end up putting more on this list. On the next list, we have programs to reinstall when my computer dies, because my old computer had this tendency of just like needing a reset like every 6 months or something. So having a list of my most used computer programs, so if something does happen, I know exactly what I need to reinstall. Very helpful. Though hopefully one that I don't need to use quite as often because my new computer isn't so persnickety. This page here is for my level 10 life, so I have my categories and then my ranking descriptions. And setting these ranking descriptions up is a goal that I have for myself for next year. So this page is page 38, not including the index page. And then after this, you can see I have a whole bunch of blank space. That's not to say that we're done here, but I've got lots of room to grow in this long-term collections journal. As mentioned, I started this one in March of 2021, and I've still only used about like 38 pages, or probably about 40 in the start of the journal. But that's the thing, it's a long-term collections journal. These are for references that I want to refer back to in years to come. That's a pretty high bar. Otherwise it'll just go in my everyday collections. Everyday journal, yearly collections journal, that kind of stuff. At the back of the notebook though, we do have some more. And this is where I put all of my pen swatches. I decided to put these at the back because having them here just means that they're very much easier to find. I have all the pen swatches together rather than kind of interdispersed or mingling with the other collections that I have. At the back, just easier to refer to. The first one we have at the back here though is my Tombow dual brush marker swatch page, and this one is set up so that it mimics the pen order that I have in my container, because I've got a container that is, you know, this dimensioned, and these are where I put each of those pen colors. Makes it a little easier, especially because as you use the Tombows, like if you use them as much as me, slowly the numbers start to rub off and then you don't necessarily know which one's which. So if they're in the right place in the holder, I know which one's which. Like for instance 243, I know the number on that one has faded off, and I know that some of my favorite colors like 195, 025, 665, like those ones, they wear off pretty quickly because I use them more often. After this we have the acrylograph tracker or acrylograph swatch page, but it's actually only the first of two that I have because I had too many acrylographs to just fit on the one spread. We've got those ones here, so got them in their collections. So if I ever need to, you know, recommend like where to get a certain color or something like that, or if I use the color and I want to link it in the description box of one of my videos, then I have which collection it was actually from. Makes it a little bit easier. After this one, we have my Staedtler Tri-Plus Fineliners with their color numbers and color names. We have the Tombow Fudenosuke brush pens, which is just the little set, just the regular kind of primary-esque colors. The Karen markers, which unfortunately when I set this one up, I set it up as a box, but then it turns out that these pen colors on the side, and possibly these ones too, I'm not too sure, but like they're not actually in a proper grid. I think it's just, yeah, the neon colors along the side aren't actually perfectly in line with the other rows, and I didn't realize until I drew it in, but that's okay. We have the Faber-Castell metallic colors, and then we've got the calligraphs. This one notably has some room to grow, so I've got probably enough space to possibly fit another set down here, maybe, or I'll just put them over here and then put like sub-box ones down here, something like that. But again, we've got the color names. We've got 2 columns of colors for these ones though, because sometimes on some of the pens, the smaller tip and the larger tip are actually different colors. Like that's intentionally done. So for instance, like the orange yellow, one of them is kind of just a golden yellow and the other one's more of an orange. Same idea with the mauve pearl, like that's a slightly different color, and some of the ones from the sub boxes have been different too. Flipping over, we have the Crayola Super Tip swatch, which is done in a grid, but I don't actually keep them in any kind of holder. This was actually ordered from the holder they did come in though, but I've since now gone and put little sticky labels on all of the Crayola Super Tips to match the pen numbers that I've given them. So like I've got a little 1 on the pen that is this color. This page used to be a different swatch that, I don't know, if you've been here a while, you might have seen me set it up. I didn't like it though because it didn't match any of the other swatches I had. It was a little bit kind of fancy looking, I suppose. I prefer them to be really simple because it's easier to keep up with and then everything looks cohesive. After this, we get into something that I've obviously started doing, but I want to do possibly as a live stream. If you'd be curious to see it as a live stream, just, you know, let me know. Give the video a thumbs up or something to like cast your vote. But I want to do a live pen swatching where I swatch all of my pens by color. So like all of my orange pens, and then all of my yellow pens, and all of my green, so on and so forth. So I've set up the pages in the sense of like titling and putting in the border, but I haven't gotten very much further than that. After grayscale, we get into the second acrylograph swatch page. So we've got a little bit of room to grow here if I get some more acrylographs at some stage. And then we have the Zig Clean Color dot pens, which took me such a long time to actually swatch these. Like I really should have swatched them earlier, but I'm glad that I have this swatch in. I actually refer back to this one more than probably most of them. This one and the Tombow, they're the ones that I probably refer to the most because they are the pens that I use the most. But as you can see, plenty of room to grow in this long-term collections journal. As said, the bar for actually having something go into the long-term collections journal is pretty high. It has to be a reference material that I am going to use for the lifetime of multiple journals. It's not just something that I need for the next 2 months or 6 months or even the next year. It's something that I'm going to want to keep for much longer. I would love to hear in the comments below if you're thinking about making a long-term collections journal or if you already have one. But if you wanted to watch more videos related to my long-term collections journal, the playlist at the top is where it's at. Or if you'd rather watch some more bullet journal flip-throughs, then the playlist at the bottom is for you. Click or tap on either of those and I'll see you over there.